We are talking Ghost Webcam. This is directed and co-written by Sebastian Dove. And I guess you would call this a found footage movie, although it's a kind of webcam movie. I guess the most well-known example of this would have been the 2020s movie The Host, or Host, which I haven't actually seen, to be fair. Now this is a very, very low budget, kind of haunted internet kind of style movie, and let's talk the plot, shall we? Okay. Well, it focuses primarily on this guy called Nate, who is chatting up this girl on some type of video conferencing app. I think he's got her details through a dating site and whatnot. And he's actually under house arrest, and we learn why that is as the movie progresses. And this girl sort of ends up talking to him and sort of says, "Oh, you should check out this this live feed coming from this kind of apparent haunted house." And they watch this kind of live feed, and a couple of things start to move around and all this. And then she seemingly is killed on camera, or at least kind of disappears. And Nate's obviously a little bit kind of surprised and worried about what's kind of going on. So he invites a couple of friends to kind of have a look at this kind of site and kind of get their opinion. And then what unravels is a kind of mystery involving kind of multiple people, multiple kind of locations, and ultimately a kind of plot where things are involved, a history is kind of revealed, and there may well be a kind of supernatural presence seeking some type of revenge. Now, what will happen? You have to watch the movie and find out. So let's talk about what I think works in this movie. Now, this is a low-budget movie. It's actually relatively short. It only runs about an hour, which I think is to its benefit because there's not really a lot visually in this movie. So it is a kind of a tight running time. What can I say other than that kind of I think works in this movie? I think there is an intriguing idea for a plot here. It's kind of a mystery, and we have mainly our kind of trio of friends. We get a couple of other people here and there, but we get mainly our kind of trio of friends try to unravel what's actually kind of going on, and there's kind of trying to find out clues on the internet and things like this, and ultimately get an idea of what might have gone on and what might have caused this phenomenon, and is it real? Is it a kind of a hoax? And there was a reasonable kind of plot progression ultimately in this kind of in this sort of narrative, which I think was obviously down to some reasonable writing. Now I think the plot kind of drops off a little bit at the end, because I really don't feel like it kind of like dotted the I's and crossed the T's in regards to fulfilling its promise in regards to what actually is kind of going on. I felt like it leaves a lot of things still open, and when a movie is so kind of sparse in regards to everything else, I think you need to have a better writing. But the general kind of idea of the plot I feel was kind of solid. I think the idea of this kind of like this live feed in this kind of haunted house was pretty good. It's to say the idea here is kind of relatively new. It's kind of the new version of kind of found footage of these. And there's been a few now, but it's not really a kind of a particularly thriller-minute movie. But I think there's a reasonable plot progression here. But I have to be honest with you. I think this movie suffers from a couple of elements that I feel let it down. Now, a movie like this, and I haven't seen Host, and I know that's relatively highly regarded. But to me, you've got to be really sharp in the writing to make a movie where you're just looking at people on a webcam for, an hour plus, really. And the writing, I think, just isn't there for this. Like I've said, I think there's a reasonable kind of like idea for a plot, but where it goes, I feel it kind of, without spoiling anything, it doesn't really kind of give you the answers you want. And again, without revealing too much about what the reasons and why things have happened, we find out what this supernatural entity is potentially after, and we find out certainly our protagonist's position on that, but we never know because there's some kind of disparity in what's kind of being said between these kind of two entities. And we never really know what the actual kind of outcome is, what the actual truth was, so to speak. So I felt like it needed to be a bit more clear on that. And again, I think the if we're trying to kind of look at this from a moral perspective, what happens is a little bit murky in regards to some of the kind of the supporting characters. So I don't think the writing is particularly kind of strong in that regards. Which leads me into the performances. Now, unfortunately, I don't think the performances are particularly strong. Again, the whole movie is predicated on us looking at a group of people on camera, literally talking into the camera. And I have to say, I think the performances were not great. You know, found footage, I think, lends itself to kind of a realistic kind of take on people's emotions and stuff like that. But I really wasn't kind of getting this from the majority of these kind of characters, if we're being honest. I mean, even what we see and don't see on screen, our main character Nate thinks he's seen murders, and we don't really see murders. All we see is something kind of like going bang, and the camera kind of like being knocked around. That could be someone tripping over. You know, it's like, well, did we see a murder? I don't think we did. Well, we do see a kind of a more on screen a little bit later on, or another character that's introduced. It looks a bit hokey and green screeny, and it's like, man, you'll know this one, is it? They must have really high ceilings in this kind of apartment. That's all I'll say. So yeah, so the kind of like the kind of the deaths and kind of the I guess the more macabre stuff you see on screen, what you do see, and it's not much, isn't particularly kind of all that. And I have to say as well, we're meant to believe this character of Nate is talking to this girl Mia for the first time on some kind of like you know, dating app, and she's kind of going about, she thinks there's a ghost in the house, and then she's like kind of like, oh my god, what's happening? I'm gonna go and check it out. I just be like, no thanks. You know, she seems like a crazy person. Why he's so interested and sort of carries on from that, I'm like, whatever. I'd be like, that looks like too much drama to me. Moving on. And then we have the other thing which I think undercuts this sense of realism that we're meant to believe here, in the fact that we have musical cues. And again, when this doesn't really work in the context of a found footage movie. Musical swells and stuff to kind of give you that kind of spooky atmosphere. Sound effects of like spooky kind of ghostly sound effects that the characters on screen don't react to, because obviously these effects have been overlaid for us as the audience's benefit. But if the characters aren't reacting to them, then what are we supposed to be hearing? Then things we have like desk icons on the kind of the screen, and rather than just the kind of the video chat stuff like this. And I'm thinking, I don't know if this really is selling the kind of the realism, so to speak. So, you know, for me, I know it's a low budget film. I know this was kind of like practically, you know, done probably with friends and family, and not a particularly kind of like professional production by any kind of means. But I really think, although I think that there was a seed of a good story here, I think everything surrounding it wasn't that interesting. This, to me, would have been better edited down to a short, a 15 to 20 minute segment in an anthology. You know, you might have been able to kind of skip out some of the kind of like the less well produced elements here. But as it stands, you know, I didn't think it was that strong, despite having, as I say, the idea of a good narrative. But that wasn't enough, really, unfortunately, because even that I didn't think was fully formed. So I have to be honest. I mean, I was considering giving this a 4, but listening to myself doing this review, I'm gonna have to say a 3, because I just don't think there's enough here to really warrant a better mark than that. It just wasn't particularly strong, really, in kind of in its execution. The idea may have been okay, but the execution wasn't. So it's a 3 out of 10 for me. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment and I'll look forward to seeing you next time.